The numbers jumped out at me like accusatory fingers from my laptop screen. $300,000. That's how much money had vanished from the Research Foundation's accounts over the past year. I rubbed my tired eyes, double-checking the spreadsheet I'd been analyzing for the past 6 hours. The trail led straight to my mother. My name is Reagan, and I've spent my entire life being the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who follows the rules. While my stepsister Annabelle dazzled at charity galas and social events, I buried myself in research papers and data analysis. It wasn't that I minded. I loved my work. But tonight, everything changed. Still here? Jasper's voice made me jump. He leaned against my office doorframe, his coffee mug steaming in the dim light. It's almost midnight, Reagan. Whatever you're working on can wait until morning. I shook my head, my fingers trembling as I turned the laptop toward him. Look at this. The Foundation's quarterly reports don't match the bank statements. Someone's been siphoning money from the research grants. Jasper set his coffee down and leaned over my shoulder, his brow furrowing as he scanned the numbers. Are you sure about this? The signatures, the approval stamps, they all lead back to the Foundation's board treasurer. My voice cracked. My mother. The same mother who'd spent 20 years reminding me I wasn't as naturally gifted as Annabelle. The same woman who'd turned every one of my academic achievements into a conversation about my stepsister's latest modeling campaign or charity event. My phone buzzed, speaking of the devil. A text from Annabelle. Mom's going crazy planning next month's gala. Says you have to come this time. No excuses. Jasper squeezed my shoulder. What are you going to do? I closed my laptop, my decision crystallizing. I'm going to that gala, but not for the reasons they think. The next morning, I arrived at the Foundation's offices earlier than usual. My mother's assistant, Sarah, was already at her desk, organizing the day's schedule. Reagan, what brings you to the administrative floor? Sarah's smile was genuine. She'd always been kind to me. Just needed to drop off some research proposals, I lied smoothly. Is my mother in? She's meeting with Trevor, Annabelle's fiancé. Something about the gala sponsorships. Perfect. I slipped into my mother's empty office, my heart pounding as I connected my USB drive to her computer. The encryption software I'd installed would give me remote access to her files. What exactly are you looking for? Jasper asked later that afternoon, as we combed through the downloaded data. Proof, transactions, anything that shows... I stopped, staring at a new email thread. Here, look at this correspondence with Trevor's investment firm. They're using the gala to launder money through fake charitable donations. Jasper whistled low. Your mother and future brother-in-law are quite the team. While Annabelle plays the perfect socialite daughter, completely unaware she's being used as their cover. The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. My phone rang. My mother this time. I answered, keeping my voice steady. Darling, I need you at the dress fitting tomorrow. Annabelle's chosen the most stunning gown for the gala, and we simply must find you something... appropriate. I could hear the implied criticism, appropriate meaning understated, forgettable, nothing that would overshadow her golden child. Of course, Mother. I wouldn't miss it. After hanging up, I turned to Jasper. I've spent my whole life being the good daughter, the quiet one, the one who never caused trouble. But they crossed a line. This money was meant for medical research, for helping people. What's your plan? I pulled up the gala guest list on my screen. Board members, donors, press. The perfect audience, don't you think? Mother always taught us that presentation is everything. Jasper's eyes widened as he realized what I was suggesting. Reagan, this could destroy your family. I thought about the patients waiting for the research grants that never came, about the scientists whose projects were shelved because the funding mysteriously dried up. I thought about years of being made to feel less than, of watching my mother's casual corruption hiding behind Annabelle's perfect smile. No, I said, my voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. This will free my family. They just don't know it yet. I started gathering the evidence into a presentation, my hands steady for the first time in days. The gala was in 3 weeks, just enough time to ensure every detail was perfect. Mother always said I had a talent for detailed analysis. Time to show her just how right she was. These donation records don't make any sense, Jasper said, spreading printouts across my desk. Look at this one. $500,000 from a company that doesn't even exist. I leaned closer, scanning the documents. The past week had been a blur of late nights and coffee-fueled investigation sessions. Shell companies. They're all shell companies, aren't they? Your mother's clever. I'll give her that. Jasper pulled up another spreadsheet. But she made one mistake. She got greedy. A knock at my office door made us both jump. Annabelle stood there, looking perfectly put together as always in her designer outfit. Surprise! I brought lunch. I scrambled to close the laptop while Jasper casually swept the papers into a folder. Annabelle set down a paper bag from my favorite deli, her expression curious. Am I interrupting something? You two look like teenagers caught making out behind the bleachers. Just boring research stuff, I said quickly. What brings you here? Can't a sister bring lunch without an ulterior motive? She perched on the edge of my desk, her perfectly manicured fingers drumming against the wood. Although, Mother's driving me crazy with this gala planning. I could use a break. Jasper cleared his throat. I should get back to my lab. After he left, Annabelle's carefully maintained smile faltered. Trevor's been acting weird lately. Secretive. Always on the phone with Mother. My heart skipped a beat. Oh? I mean, I know they're working on gala stuff, but... She shrugged, trying to look nonchalant. Sometimes I feel like I'm just a prop in their perfect little world. For the first time, I really looked at my stepsister. Behind the flawless makeup and practiced smile, I saw something familiar, the same trapped feeling I'd been fighting all these years. Annabelle, I started, but my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Your mother's looking for the Foundation's audit reports. Says you have them? I should go. Annabelle stood up. Photo shoot for the gala invitations. Mother insists on capturing the perfect family moment. She rolled her eyes. After she left, I called Jasper. We need to move faster. Mother's looking for the audit reports. Already on it. Meet me at the coffee house in 20 minutes. The cafe was busy enough to mask our conversation. Jasper slid a USB drive across the table. I traced the shell companies. They all lead back to Trevor's investment firm. But here's where it gets interesting. The money's being routed through offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Classic. I took a sip of my Americano. But why? Mother's salary is more than generous. That's not all. Jasper lowered his voice. I found emails between your mother and Trevor discussing something called Project Legacy. They're planning to announce it at the gala. My phone lit up with a text from Mother. Darling, don't forget. Dress fitting tomorrow at 10. And please do something with your hair this time. I ignored it. What's Project Legacy? From what I can piece together, they're planning to restructure the foundation, move all research funding to approved projects only, meaning projects that funnel money back to them. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. They're not just stealing from existing grants, they're setting up a permanent pipeline. Using Annabelle's public image as cover, Jasper added. The perfect charitable face for their scheme. I thought about Annabelle's earlier words, about feeling like a prop. She has no idea, does she? Speaking of no idea, Jasper nodded toward the cafe entrance. Trevor had just walked in with my mother. We ducked behind our menus, but they were too absorbed in their conversation to notice us. They sat at a table near enough that snippets of their discussion drifted over. The announcement will be perfect, my mother was saying. Annabelle on stage, presenting our vision for the Foundation's future. And the old guard won't know what hit them, Trevor replied with a smirk. I felt sick. They were going to use Annabelle to announce their own corrupt scheme, making her an unwitting accomplice. Back in my office, I pulled up the gala preparations folder on my laptop. Mother had already scripted everything, the speeches, the photo ops, even the exact moment Annabelle would announce Project Legacy. We can't let this happen, I told Jasper over the phone that evening. They're not just stealing money anymore. They're trying to legitimize their corruption. What's our next move? I stared at the gala invitation on my desk, featuring a photo of Annabelle's smiling face. We need to talk to Sarah. She handles all the Foundation's correspondence. She must have seen something. That's risky. She's your mother's right hand. True. I picked up the invitation. But Sarah's always had a soft spot for me. And more importantly, she believes in what the foundation is supposed to stand for. Be careful, Reagan. The closer we get to the gala, the more dangerous this becomes. I thought about Annabelle, about all the researchers counting on these grants, about years of watching my mother's casual corruption destroy everything she touched. Some things are worth the risk. Sarah's hands shook as she handed me the stack of documents. I always knew something wasn't right, but this... She glanced nervously at my mother's empty office across the hall. If she finds out I showed you these... She won't, I assured her, quickly photographing each page with my phone. You're doing the right thing. The foundation board meeting minutes, Sarah whispered. Your mother's been doctoring them for months. The real versions are very different from what she's been presenting. A door slammed somewhere down the hall. Sarah jumped, snatching the papers back. Go, now. I slipped out just as Trevor's voice echoed through the corridor. Paula, we need to discuss the announcement. I ducked into the stairwell, pressing myself against the wall as their voices drifted down. Everything's arranged, my mother said. Once Project Legacy is announced, the board won't have a choice. The press will be there, the major donors. And Annabelle? She'll do exactly what she's told. She always does. Their footsteps faded. I waited until the coast was clear, then rushed to Jasper's lab. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said, pulling me inside. Better. I connected my phone to his computer. Sarah came through. Look at these meeting minutes. Mother's been systematically misleading the board about where the money's going. Jasper scrolled through the photos. This is huge, Reagan. With this evidence, the lab door burst open. Annabelle stood there, mascara streaking her cheeks. I need to talk to you. Jasper and I exchanged panicked looks. How much had she heard? Trevor's cheating on me, she blurted out. Not what I was expecting. What? How do you know? I found messages on his phone, but it's worse than that. She collapsed into a chair. He's been meeting with Mother almost every day, planning something big. Something about the foundation. I caught Jasper's eye. He nodded slightly. Annabelle, I said carefully. What do you know about Project Legacy? Her perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together. The new charitable initiative? Mother says I'm announcing it at the gala. Some kind of restructuring to make the foundation more efficient. She paused. Why? Because it's a lie. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. The whole thing is a front for embezzlement. Mother and Trevor have been stealing from research grants, and they're planning to use you to make it all look legitimate. Annabelle stared at me, then laughed shakily. That's ridiculous. Mother would never... she's always been about appearances, but... Look. I pulled up the evidence on Jasper's computer. These are the real numbers, the shell companies, the offshore accounts. As Annabelle read, her face went from disbelief to horror to anger. All those times they were planning the gala together, they were planning this? They're going to have you announce it, Jasper said gently. Make you the face of their scheme. Annabelle stood up abruptly, pacing the lab. I always knew Mother was controlling, but this? Using me to steal from sick people? She whirled to face me. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Would you have believed me? I asked quietly. Over Mother? She stopped pacing. No, probably not. A bitter laugh escaped her. God, I've been so stupid. The perfect daughter doing exactly what she's told. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Your mother's looking for the original meeting minutes. She knows something's wrong. We need to move fast, I told them. Mother suspects something's up. What are you planning to do? Annabelle asked. Expose everything, at the gala. You'll destroy her. She destroyed herself. I hesitated. But I can't do it alone. I need your help. Annabelle was quiet for a long moment, twisting her engagement ring around her finger. Finally, she pulled it off and set it on Jasper's desk with a decisive click. Count me in. Her voice was steel. Nobody uses me as a prop in their corruption scheme. Not even Mother. Jasper cleared his throat. Not to interrupt this touching sister moment, but we have another problem. Look at this email I just found. We crowded around his computer. Mother had sent instructions to the Foundation's IT department to wipe certain servers, scheduled for the day before the gala. She's covering her tracks, I said. Then we better make sure we have everything we need before she does. Annabelle pulled out her phone. I know Mother's passwords, all of them. She made me memorize them in case of emergencies. For the first time since this began, I felt real hope. Together we might actually pull this off. The gala's in 2 weeks, Jasper reminded us. Annabelle's smile was fierce. Perfect. Just enough time to plan our own little announcement. Smile, darling. You look like you're at a funeral. Mother adjusted my dress for the 10th time as the boutique's seamstress pinned the hem. The gala is a celebration, not a wake, if she only knew. I forced a smile, catching Annabelle's eye in the mirror. My stepsister was perched on a velvet settee, pretending to scroll through her phone while actually recording every word. The press will be there, Mother continued, fussing with my hair. The governor, key donors, everything must be perfect. She turned to Annabelle. Darling, have you memorized your speech for the Project Legacy announcement? Every word, Mother. Annabelle's voice was honey-sweet, though I was thinking of adding my own personal touch. Mother's smile tightened. Stick to the script, dear. This isn't the time for improvisation. The seamstress finished her work, and Mother swept out to take a call, leaving Annabelle and me alone in the fitting room. Did you get that? I whispered. Annabelle played back the recording. Mother's voice rang clear. The governor's office has already approved the restructuring. Once the announcement is made, it's a done deal. Another piece of evidence. I stepped down from the platform, careful of the pins. How are things with Trevor? He's suspicious, keeps asking if I've talked to you lately. She lowered her voice. Last night, I found him going through my laptop. Did he find anything? Please. She rolled her eyes. I learned from the best. Mother taught me everything about keeping secrets. Her smile turned bitter. Ironic, isn't it? The boutique door chimed. Jasper walked in, pretending to be lost. Sir, this is a private fitting, the saleswoman began. Oh, Jasper, Annabelle called out. Right on time to help with color choices. Mother returned just then, her face darkening at the sight of him. What is he doing here? I invited him, Annabelle said smoothly. We need a man's opinion, don't we? And since Trevor's so busy with foundation work? Mother's expression shifted from annoyance to satisfaction. Of course, dear, though perhaps someone more qualified. Actually, Jasper interrupted, I came to discuss the latest grant applications with Reagan. Time-sensitive matters. Work, 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 Mother sighed. Reagan, dear, you really must learn to separate your professional and personal life. The gala is in 10 days, I finished. I know, Mother. Everything will be perfect. After Mother left to berate the saleswoman about something, Jasper pulled out his phone. Sarah came through again. Look what she found in the Foundation's archived emails. I looked at the screen, my breath catching. There it was, the original proposal for Project Legacy, dated 2 years ago. But instead of a charitable initiative, it outlined a complex scheme to redirect research funds through private investments. Mother's been planning this for years, Annabelle whispered, reading over my shoulder. There's more, Jasper said. Trevor's firm isn't just managing the money, they're creating fake research projects to justify the funding transfers. The boutique door chimed again. Trevor walked in. Hide the phone, I hissed. Annabelle immediately draped herself on Trevor's arm, playing the adoring fiancé. Darling, what a surprise. We were just discussing the gala. Were you? Trevor's eyes flickered between us. With him? He nodded toward Jasper. Fashion emergency, Jasper said dryly. Apparently, I have an eye for color. Annabelle, Trevor said, his voice tight. A word? They stepped aside, but not far enough that we couldn't hear. Your mother's worried, Trevor muttered. Says you've been distant, asking strange questions about the Foundation. I'm just trying to understand my role better, Annabelle replied, for the announcement. Stick to the script. The same words Mother had used. There's too much at stake. After they left, Jasper turned to me. They're getting nervous. Good. I checked my phone. A new message from Sarah. Your mother just called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow. Something about security concerns. "She's moving faster than we expected," Jasper said. "We need to be ready." I looked at my reflection in the fitting room mirror. The perfect daughter in the perfect dress for the perfect gala. Mother had spent years crafting this image, using both Annabelle and me as pieces in her elaborate game. "Reagan?" Jasper touched my arm. "Are you sure about this? Once we do this, there's no going back." "I'm sure." I smoothed down the dress. Mother always taught us that presentation is everything. Time to show her just how well we learned that lesson. "The board meeting tomorrow," he said. "If she's planning what I think she is, then we'll be ready." I picked up my phone to text Annabelle. "Tell Trevor you're spending the night reviewing your speech. Meet us at my place at 8. The response came immediately. "I'll bring wine. We're going to need it." The pieces were in place. Now we just had to survive the next 10 days. The board meeting was a disaster, Sarah whispered into her phone. I had her on speaker as Annabelle, Jasper, and I huddled around my kitchen table. "Your mother's convinced there's a leak. She's ordered a complete system lockdown." "Can you still access the files?" I asked, watching Jasper type frantically on his laptop. "No, but—" Sarah lowered her voice further. "I made copies, everything. I'll leave them in the usual place." After hanging up, Annabelle poured more wine into our glasses. "Mother called me 3 times today. She wants me to move the Project Legacy announcement to the beginning of the gala, instead of after dinner." "She's rushing it," Jasper said, still typing, trying to get ahead of any potential exposure. My phone buzzed. Trevor calling. I showed the screen to Annabelle. "Don't answer," she said. "He's been watching me like a hawk. Yesterday, he followed me to the grocery store." "We need to move faster." I pulled up our evidence folder. "Sarah's copies will be the final piece. Once we have those—" A knock at my door made us all freeze. Through the peephole, I saw Mother standing there, perfectly coiffed, despite the late hour. "Places, everyone," I whispered. Jasper grabbed his laptop and slipped into my bedroom, while Annabelle quickly hid the documents under my couch cushions. I opened the door. "Mother, it's almost midnight." "Can't a mother check on her daughters?" She swept in, taking in the wine glasses and Annabelle's presence with sharp eyes. "A little late for a social call, isn't it?" "Wedding jitters," Annabelle said smoothly. "I needed sister time." Mother's smile didn't reach her eyes. "How sweet. Though I hope these sisterly bonding sessions aren't distracting you from your speech preparation." "Actually," I interjected, "I've been helping her practice. Want to hear it?" "You?" Mother's laugh was like breaking glass. "Darling, no offense, but public speaking has never been your strong suit. Remember your high school graduation? That awkward valedictorian speech?" Annabelle stood up. "Mother, stop it. Reagan's been incredibly helpful." "Has she?" Mother's gaze swept the room. "And what else has your sister been helping with?" The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Before anyone could respond, a toilet flushed, Jasper's signal that he'd finished wiping his laptop's search history. Mother's eyes narrowed. "Do you have company?" "Just me." Jasper emerged, the picture of casual innocence. "Late-night research consultation. You know how it is with grant deadlines." "Indeed." Mother's voice could have frozen hell. "Reagan, darling, a word in private?" She led me to the kitchen, her manicured nails digging into my arm. "Whatever you think you're doing, stop it. Now." "I don't know what you mean." "Don't play dumb. It doesn't suit you." She leaned closer. "You've always been the smart one, haven't you? Hidden away in your lab, watching, analyzing. But this time you're out of your depth." "Am I?" "The foundation is my life's work. I won't let anyone destroy that. Not even you." Her smile turned predatory. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice the server access logs? The copied files?" My heart stopped. "Mother." "I'm moving the announcement to tomorrow night." She released my arm. "A private preview event. Just key stakeholders and family. No press, no distractions." "That's not the plan," Annabelle said from the doorway. "The gala—" "Plans change, darling. Be ready at 7. Mother headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Reagan, I've suspended your lab's funding, pending review, of course. We can't be too careful with security concerns. After she left, we all stared at each other in shocked silence. She knows, Jasper said, emerging from the bedroom. She's cutting us off at the knees. Not yet. I pulled out my phone. Sarah, change of plans. We need those files tonight. The security guards. I don't care. Mother's moving everything up. Tomorrow night. Annabelle was already grabbing her coat. I'll create a distraction at the foundation. Say I need to practice in the event space. I'll handle the tech side, Jasper added. If she's locked down the servers, there might still be a backdoor through the backup systems. My phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. Whatever you're planning, don't. Some things are bigger than family. He's right, I said, showing them the message. This is bigger than family. That's exactly why we have to do it. Annabelle grabbed her keys. Meet at the foundation in 30 minutes, back entrance. As they left, I looked at the wine glasses on my table, evidence of our conspiracy. Mother had taught us well, about appearances, about secrets, about power. But she'd forgotten one crucial lesson. The student sometimes surpasses the teacher. The foundation's preview event buzzed with nervous energy. Board members mingled with investors, their champagne glasses clinking like wind chimes before a storm. Mother held court near the podium, resplendent in midnight blue, while Trevor hovered nearby, checking his phone every 30 seconds. Stop fidgeting, Mother hissed as I passed. And for heaven's sake, fix your hair. I touched the USB drive hidden in my clutch, remembering last night's frantic operation. Sarah had come through. The files were devastating. Mother had no idea we'd managed to access them just hours before her system purge. 5 minutes until the announcement, Trevor announced, his voice carrying across the room. Everyone, please take your seats. Annabelle appeared at my elbow, looking stunning in emerald green. Ready? Sarah's in position? Broadcasting everything to the main foundation servers. She squeezed my hand. Once this starts, there's no stopping it. Ladies and gentlemen, Mother took the stage, practically glowing. Thank you all for joining us on such short notice. Tonight marks a new chapter in our foundation's history. I slipped away toward the AV booth while she spoke, my heart thundering. Jasper was already there, pretending to adjust sound levels. Cameras are live, he whispered. Every board member got an anonymous email link. They're all watching the live stream on their phones. And the backup? Running. Even if they cut the power, everything's being recorded to external servers. Mother's voice filled the room. And now, I'm thrilled to introduce my daughter, Annabelle, who will share our vision for Project Legacy. Applause erupted as Annabelle took the stage. She looked perfectly poised, exactly as Mother had trained her to be, but I saw her hands shaking as she gripped the podium. Thank you, Mother. Annabelle's voice was clear and strong. Before I begin, I'd like to share something personal. Mother's smile flickered. This wasn't in the script. All my life I've been the face of this foundation, the perfect daughter, the charitable socialite, the cover story. Annabelle paused. But tonight, I'm choosing to be something else, honest. Trevor started moving toward the stage. I nodded to Jasper, who clicked a button. The screens behind Annabelle lit up with financial records, email chains, offshore account details. Project Legacy isn't about charity, Annabelle continued as gasps filled the room. It's about greed, corruption, stealing from the sick and desperate to line private pockets. That's enough! Mother's voice cracked like a whip. Security! I stepped onto the stage beside my sister. The evidence has already been sent to the FBI, Mother, and the press. Sarah's broadcasting this live to every major news outlet. The room erupted in chaos. Board members jumped to their feet, phones recording everything. Trevor tried to reach the AV booth, but Jasper had locked the door. You ungrateful little... Mother lunged for the podium, but Annabelle stood her ground. $300,000 from the Cancer Research Fund, Annabelle read from the screen. $500,000 from pediatric studies, all funneled through Trevor's investment firm into private accounts. You have no idea what you're doing, Mother snarled. The people we answer to? Will all be investigated, I finished. Every shell company, every fake grant, every donor who helped you steal from sick children. Trevor finally reached the stage. "Paula, we need to leave. Now." But Mother wasn't finished. She grabbed the microphone. "Everything I did was for this foundation, for our family's legacy." "No," Annabelle's voice cut through the chaos. "It was for you, always for you, using me as your perfect distraction while you robbed the people we promised to help." Security guards appeared at the doors, but they weren't Mother's. Sarah had called in the real police. "Paula Horton?" An officer approached the stage. "We need you to come with us." The look Mother gave me could have melted steel. "I gave you everything, both of you. This is how you repay me?" "You gave us lessons in manipulation and lies," I said. "Consider this our final exam." As they led Mother and Trevor away, the board members crowded around us, demanding explanations. Phones kept recording, questions flew from all directions. Through it all, Annabelle held my hand, both of us standing tall. "Miss Horton?" A reporter had somehow gotten in. "What happens to the foundation now?" I looked at Annabelle, who nodded. "We start over, transparently, honestly, the way it always should have been. And Project Legacy," someone called out, "will be exactly what it claims to be," Annabelle answered. "A fresh start, a true legacy of helping others, not helping ourselves." As the chaos continued around us, Jasper appeared at my side. "You did it." "We did it," I corrected, watching Mother's perfect world crumble. "All of us." The truth was out. The storm had broken. And somehow, standing in the wreckage of our mother's empire, I felt lighter than I had in years. The police station buzzed with activity as Mother sat across from us, her designer outfit wrinkled from hours in holding. Her makeup had smeared, but her eyes remained sharp as razors. "You've made your point," she said coldly. "Now drop the charges." Annabelle laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Drop the charges. The FBI has already seized the foundation's accounts. Trevor's singing like a bird to save himself. It's over, Mother." "Over?" Mother leaned forward. "Do you have any idea how many lives you've ruined? The connections you've severed? The donors?" "The donors are cooperating with the investigation," I cut in. "Turns out nobody wants to be connected to a charity fraud scandal." The detective entered, placing a thick file on the table. "Mrs. Horton, we've found additional accounts in the Cayman Islands. Care to explain?" Mother's lawyer touched her arm. "My client exercises her right to remain silent." "That's a first," Annabelle muttered. We watched as Mother was led back to her cell. Through the window, I could see reporters camped outside the station, hungry for updates on the scandal that had rocked the city's philanthropic community. "Miss Horton?" The detective addressed me. "We'll need your statement about when you first discovered the discrepancies." For the next 2 hours, I walked them through everything. The missing research funds, the shell companies, the fake grants. Annabelle added her own testimony about Trevor's involvement and the planned announcement. "Your mother's looking at serious time," the detective said finally. "Both of them are. The amount of money involved. We're talking federal charges." Jasper was waiting outside the interview room. "The board's called an emergency meeting. They want you both there." "Now?" Annabelle checked her phone. "It's almost midnight. Damage control doesn't sleep." The foundation's offices were eerily quiet as we rode the elevator to the boardroom. Sarah met us at the door, her eyes red from crying. "They've been in there for hours," she whispered, "trying to save what's left." Inside, the board members looked shell-shocked. The chairman, an elderly man who'd known our father, spoke first. "Ladies, please sit down." He shuffled some papers. "We've spent the evening reviewing the extent of the situation. The foundation's reputation is salvageable," I interrupted, "if we act fast and with complete transparency." "The press is calling it the legacy scandal," another board member said. "Our donors are fleeing." Annabelle straightened in her chair. "Then let me talk to them. I've been the face of this foundation for years. Let me tell them the truth, that we discovered the corruption and chose to expose it ourselves. It's not that simple. Actually, it is." I pulled out my laptop. "I've drafted a complete restructuring plan, new oversight measures, transparent accounting, direct links between donors and the research they fund." The board members exchanged looks. "We need new leadership." the chairman said slowly. Someone who understands both the scientific and public aspects of our mission. I felt Annabelle squeeze my hand under the table. We'd like to offer you both positions, he continued. Reagan as Executive Director of Research, Annabelle as Director of Public Relations and Donor Relations. Together? Annabelle asked. Together. Your actions, while shocking, showed integrity, something this foundation desperately needs to rebuild. As we left the building hours later, the sky was starting to lighten. Reporters swarmed us immediately. Miss Horton, how does it feel to expose your own mother's corruption? What's next for the foundation? Annabelle stepped forward, every inch the polished spokesperson. The foundation is entering a new era of transparency and genuine charitable work. My sister and I— Look! Someone shouted. Through the media crowd, we saw Trevor being led out of the federal building in handcuffs. His expensive suit was rumpled, his face ashen. Miss Sanderson, do you have any comment about your ex-fiancé's arrest? Annabelle's composure cracked slightly. I stepped up beside her. The Foundation's future isn't about the past, I said firmly. It's about the researchers working to save lives, the patients waiting for breakthroughs, and the donors who genuinely want to help. That's the only story that matters now. Jasper appeared with his car, offering escape from the media frenzy. As we drove away, Annabelle finally broke down. I loved him, she whispered, or thought I did. How did we not see who they really were? We saw what they wanted us to see, I replied, just like everyone else. The board meeting tomorrow. Today, Jasper corrected, glancing at the dawn breaking over the city. Today, Annabelle agreed. We start fixing everything they broke. I thought about Mother sitting in her cell, still believing she was right. About all the years she'd spent teaching us to maintain appearances while hiding ugly truths. We're not fixing their foundation, I said. We're building our own, the right way this time. The sun rose higher, painting the sky in shades of promise. Somewhere in the city, Mother's empire was crumbling. But from its ashes, something honest could finally grow. Guilty on all counts, the judge's voice echoed through the courtroom. Mother stood perfectly straight, her designer suit a stark contrast to the handcuffs at her wrists. She didn't look at us as they led her away. Trevor had already taken his plea deal, trading information for a lighter sentence. But Mother had insisted on fighting, convinced until the end that she could talk her way out of anything. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us again. This time I was ready. The verdict sends a clear message, I said into the forest of microphones. No one is above accountability, not even family. Miss Horton, the Foundation's new pediatric research initiative has already raised millions. Was this your response to your mother's crimes? Annabelle stepped forward. Every dollar stolen from sick children will be repaid threefold. That's our promise. Back at the Foundation, Sarah had arranged a staff meeting. The boardroom was packed. Researchers, administrators, grant coordinators, all waiting to hear what came next. The trial's over, I announced. Now we focus on what matters, the work. Dr. Reynolds' cancer study needs additional funding, someone called out. Approved, Annabelle said, checking her tablet, along with the stem cell research team and the rare disease initiative. But the budget is solid, I assured them. Every donation is now tracked in real time on our public database. Donors can see exactly where their money goes, down to the last cent. After the meeting, Jasper found me in my office. You haven't opened it yet. He nodded at the envelope on my desk, Mother's last attempt to communicate before sentencing. Nothing she says can change anything. Maybe not, but you might need to hear it anyway. I picked up the letter, Mother's precise handwriting stark against the prison stationery. Reagan, you think you've won? Perhaps you have. But everything I did was to secure our position, our influence. You'll understand someday when the weight of legacy bears down on you. Power requires sacrifice. Remember that. Mother. Annabelle appeared in the doorway as I crumpled the letter. Still trying to justify herself? Still trying to teach her lessons? I tossed the paper into the shredder. Speaking of which, the university called. They want us to give a guest lecture on ethical leadership. Us? Annabelle laughed. I'm not exactly professor material. No, you're better. You're living proof that people can choose integrity over advantage. The intercom buzzed. Sarah's voice carried through. The governor's here for the tour. We walked together through the foundation's halls, now bright with transparency, both literal and figurative. Glass walls had replaced solid ones, letting sunlight and scrutiny reach every corner. The governor waited in the lobby, surrounded by aides. "Impressive changes," he said, gesturing at the digital displays showing real-time grant allocations and research progress. "Very modern." "Would you like to meet some of our researchers?" I offered. "Dr. Reynolds is about to test a promising new treatment protocol." "Actually," he cleared his throat, "I was hoping to discuss the Foundation's political connections. Your mother had certain arrangements." "Those arrangements died with the old regime," Annabelle cut in smoothly. "But we'd love to show you how your state's medical research grants are advancing critical studies." I hid my smile. Mother had taught us well about handling powerful people, just not the way she'd intended. Later, in the lab, Jasper showed us the latest results from the pediatric trials. "This could change everything," he said, pointing to the data. "With the new funding, we might have a breakthrough within months." Mother would have buried this, I realized. It didn't fit her profit model. "Mother isn't here," Annabelle said firmly. "We are, and we're doing it right." My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Reporter from Times requesting interview. Says it's about Mother's old network starting new foundation across state." I showed the message to Annabelle. "Ready to fight another battle?" "Always," she grinned. "But first, dinner? I'm starving." As we left the building, I caught our reflection in the glass doors. Two sisters, no longer in anyone's shadow. The Foundation's new logo shone above us. Truth heals. "You know what Mother never understood?" Annabelle said as we walked to the car. "Real power isn't about control, it's about choice." "And we choose to help people," I finished. The city lights sparkled around us, each one representing someone whose life our work might touch. Mother's legacy had been built on lies, but ours would be built on something stronger: truth, trust, and the courage to stand up for both. "So," Jasper called from behind us, "about that Times reporter." I exchanged looks with Annabelle. We both smiled. Another battle, another day. But this time we were fighting for something real, and that made all the difference.
My mother-in-law made it clear that anyone unwilling to contribute to the household chores was not welcome in her home. She appeared to anticipate an apology from me, possibly even some remorse. Meanwhile, my husband sat next to her, a subtle smirk playing across his face as if he took pleasure in seeing me reprimanded. Contrary to what they might have expected, I felt an unexpected wave of calm wash over me. "Then I'll leave," I stated with conviction, devoid of any hesitation. At that moment, I decided it was no longer my concern to fret over their actions or attitudes. It dawned on me that they would eventually have to confront the repercussions of their behavior. My name is Elizabeth, and I'm 40 years old. I balance a full-time job with managing our household. My husband Andrew and I have 3 adult children who have moved out to start their own lives. Andrew and I had envisioned this period as our time to enjoy together, but circumstances changed when my mother-in-law, widowed and needing company, moved in with us. Her arrival significantly altered the dynamic at home, which once was peaceful and shared just between Andrew and me. My job is demanding, often requiring me to stay at the office until past 7 p.m. When I return home, the sight that greets me only adds to my exhaustion. The living room is often cluttered with snacks and clothes everywhere. Andrew, meanwhile, seems oblivious to the chaos, lounging on the sofa with his beer and TV, barely acknowledging my presence. With no dinner ready, I'm left to handle the kitchen duties myself, my disappointment growing by the minute. During these evenings, my mother-in-law often emerges from her room to criticize me, claiming my late nights and business trips are no excuse for neglecting home duties. She accuses me of failing as a homemaker, turning every small issue into a critique of my character. Over time, I found that responding or trying to defend myself only escalates the situation. Instead, I've learned it's wiser to let her have her say and wait for her to calm down. This approach, while far from ideal, prevents further arguments and keeps the peace, at least temporarily. So I take a moment to absorb her criticisms and then redirect my attention to preparing dinner. Although her words sting, I persevere, knowing she'll eventually stop. What's harder to tolerate, however, is my husband's reaction. He seems to take pleasure in seeing me chided by my mother-in-law. "Women should appreciate their husbands. You lack charm," she often repeats, and my husband echoes her, mocking me as I lay the dinner table. My anger isn't just directed at her. I find myself increasingly irritated by my husband's attitude. Despite my repeated pleas for them to start dinner without me when I'm delayed at work, they never do. When I finally get home, they sit idly by, waiting for me to serve them as if I were a servant. The dynamic in our home has worsened significantly since my mother-in-law came to live with us. Before her arrival, my husband was a partner in the true sense, helping around the house, cooking meals when I was late, and actively participating in raising our kids. But now, he's stopped assisting altogether and has joined my mother-in-law in her frequent critiques. It's both confusing and frustrating. She labels me lazy and incompetent, yet she's the one relying on us. She hasn't contributed financially despite inheriting money from her late husband. Instead, she squandered it on luxuries, quickly running through her funds and even accumulating debt. Now she lives with us, virtually rent-free. This tension started from day one of living together. She promised to be considerate, even bowing deeply to show her sincerity. But merely a day later, she reverted to her old ways, criticizing me for neglecting the housework. Initially, her sudden change was almost amusing, but it quickly turned serious. She accused me of being a poor wife because of my focus on work, criticizing not just my housekeeping but my professional commitments too. I tried explaining that my job sometimes demands late hours, but it seems to fall on deaf ears. Despite my attempts to explain, my mother-in-law didn't listen. Instead, she suggested that I take a part-time job at the local supermarket, as if that would somehow be more suitable. She had a fixed idea of what a daughter-in-law should be like, but had little understanding of the realities of my job. Living with her became increasingly challenging. Any dissatisfaction she had, like with our meal choices, would lead to complaints. Even simple routines like breakfast turned into issues. We used to grab bread or buy lunch, but she disapproved of these habits. Reluctantly, she started following our household rules, but not without constant grumbling. Dinner time became the focal point of contention. She insisted that it be served promptly at 7 p.m. with at least 3 side dishes, and demanded that everyone eat together. She claimed this was what normal families did, but my work often kept me well past 7 p.m., making her demands impractical. Her rigid expectations clashed with the reality of my professional obligations, which were essential for our financial stability. She doubted the necessity of my job, suggesting that my husband Andrew's income should be sufficient and insinuating that my work was more about personal choice than financial need. When I looked to Andrew for support, he simply dismissed the concerns, suggesting I would learn my lesson eventually. His lack of defense only deepened my frustration. It seemed he was content playing the role of the indifferent, sympathetic husband who was seemingly incapable of contributing to household chores. This behavior irritated me even more because when we first moved in with my mother-in-law, he quickly aligned with her instead of supporting me. Since then, they have both seemed to team up against me, treating me unfairly. Whenever I attempted to involve Andrew in the housework, my mother-in-law would interject, declaring such tasks were the wife's responsibility, and Andrew did nothing to challenge her. This change in dynamics puzzled me, as we used to collaborate well before. Eventually, I started noticing a pattern. Andrew smirking each time his mother criticized me. It dawned on me that perhaps he was uncomfortable with the fact that I earned more than he did. and maybe he resented taking on household duties for that reason. This realization made me question many aspects of our relationship and how much had changed since his mother moved in with us. Andrew can't voice any dissatisfaction as he is traditionally seen as the family provider, but I suspect he's been relishing this situation since it began. When my mother-in-law moved in, she frequently criticized my role in the household, openly questioning whether Andrew was truly the head of the family. This seemed to provide him with a certain satisfaction when I was scolded, revealing a side of my husband that I hadn't fully acknowledged before, even after all these years together. Following her arrival, I spent many anxious days contemplating what to do. The once peaceful atmosphere had been replaced by constant tension. My mother-in-law was incessantly problematic, and Andrew was proving to be unreliable. Before she came, I hadn't felt the need to make any drastic decisions. One day while I was out shopping, a neighbor approached me with a remark that caught me off guard. She suggested I should be more considerate towards my mother-in-law. Surprised, I asked her to elaborate. She confessed that she wasn't fond of her mother-in-law but didn't consider herself inconsiderate. Then she revealed something unsettling. My mother-in-law had been talking about me. According to her, I neglected all housework, our home was always a mess, and laundry was perpetually piled up. She claimed her rheumatism was worsening because she had to do chores herself, since her son, Andrew, returned home late from work. Hearing how I was being portrayed was shocking as a neglectful wife who relied on bread for every meal, leaving my mother-in-law to lament and complain. This narrative had begun to affect how people in our neighborhood viewed me. It became clear that the cold, less friendly reactions I was receiving were due to the stories my mother-in-law was spreading. Despite her small, frail appearance, she knew how to elicit sympathy from others, painting herself as a victim of a lazy daughter-in-law who shirked all household responsibilities. The neighbor's look was one of cold accusation, reflecting the impact of these harmful tales. Feeling a deep sense of embarrassment that our family issues had become neighborhood gossip, I murmured a denial and quickly returned home. As I entered the living room, I found my mother-in-law absorbed in her TV show, snacking away. "Please stop spreading rumors," I urged firmly. To my dismay, she just laughed and insisted, "But it's true!" Something inside me reached its breaking point. If she was determined to persist in her falsehoods, then I would no longer uphold the pretense of a dutiful daughter-in-law. The very next day, after returning from work, I was met with the usual demands for dinner. This time, however, I bypassed my husband and mother-in-law's complaints, went straight to the kitchen, and prepared just a single serving of instant ramen for myself. Seeing this, my mother-in-law's face turned a shade of crimson, her protests growing louder. "So, you're just proving you're the worst daughter-in-law, not doing any housework, huh? Fine, if that's the way you want to be," she declared angrily. As I quietly enjoyed my noodles, she was left speechless, eventually turning to my husband, seeking his support. When he approached me, I laid out the whole situation. "Mom's been telling everyone that I'm a terrible daughter-in-law who neglects the housework. When I confronted her, she doubled down on her claims, so I've decided to just stop doing chores altogether. I'm only doing what she's been telling everyone." I shared the encounter with the neighbor from the previous day. My husband, looking concerned, tried to mediate. "Mom probably just exaggerated. Don't be so stubborn," he suggested. Despite his mother clearly being in the wrong, he still sided with her. Exhausted and without the energy to argue further, I discarded the empty ramen cup, ignored his pleas, and retreated to the bathroom. There, I did my laundry and took a bath in solitude. As I soaked, a wave of relief washed over me. It became clear that regardless of my efforts, I was always going to be labeled as the bad wife. From that moment on, I decided to stop engaging in the household tasks my mother-in-law complained about. She bemoaned the lack of freshly baked bread for breakfast on my days off, but I remained steadfast in my new resolve. When I woke up and stepped into the living room, My mother-in-law demanded that I go out and buy bread immediately. In response, I retorted, "Why don't you buy it yourself? I'm such a bad wife. I'll only buy my share. From now on, you'll need to pay for your food or handle it yourself." With that, I ignored her protests, made myself coffee, and quickly ate my bread. As I watched her reaction, a part of me worried that I might have been too harsh, but considering all I had endured, it felt justified. After finishing my breakfast, I tidied only my part of the cluttered living room and settled down with a book. The calm was soon interrupted by the doorbell. Glancing at the monitor, I saw a group of more than 4 elderly people, all familiar faces, standing there with visibly upset expressions. Confused, I watched as my mother-in-law rushed to greet them. They filed in, one after the other, and I was taken aback when one of them abruptly berated me. "I hear you're the wicked woman who doesn't even care for her mother-in-law." These visitors were my mother-in-law's siblings and their spouses. She had spread false tales of mistreatment. She accused me of not feeding her properly and not allowing her to bathe, pleading for their intervention. Being the youngest of 4, with 3 elder siblings, she had a significant support network. Now, with spouses included, there were 8 elderly people in my living room, labeling me as some kind of demon wife deserving of retribution. Their accusations made me break out in a cold sweat from fear. "This is a misunderstanding," I finally managed to say, my voice trembling. But then, the eldest brother raised his voice, pounded his cane on the floor, and yelled, "Stop making excuses!" The others joined him, demanding that I apologize and reflect on my supposed misdeeds. Just then, my husband arrived, drawn by the noise. When my mother-in-law's brother turned to criticize my upbringing, my husband didn't defend me. Instead, he joined in the criticism, adding to the chorus of voices against me. My affection for him vanished in that instant. I had always believed my husband was a kind person until we began living with my mother-in-law. It became clear that he wasn't kind. He was just weak, easily influenced by those around him, and unable to withstand any form of pressure. During a heated discussion, one of my mother-in-law's brothers took my husband's criticisms to heart and suggested a divorce. To my dismay, everyone seemed to agree. My mother-in-law then offered me a so-called second chance, provided I promised to change and better serve her and my husband in the future. Trying to hold back tears, her siblings urged me to be grateful, claiming I would never find a kinder mother-in-law elsewhere. They even decided to implement a rotating schedule, taking turns each week to check whether I was keeping up with the household chores and attending to my mother-in-law and husband's needs adequately. Once their plans were set, everyone appeared content and decided to celebrate their reunion with a sushi outing, leaving the house together. As they departed, my mother-in-law couldn't resist a parting shot, instructing me to ensure the house was clean and the laundry done by the time they returned. I was left to wonder, how had things escalated to this point? Alone in the cluttered living room, tears began to well up. Our marriage had been happy until my mother-in-law's intrusion. Now I found myself the subject of complaints from all the relatives despite doing my best. Tears streamed down my face, a mix of sadness, regret, and anger. A few hours later, my husband and mother-in-law came back. I was still sitting in the disarrayed living room. My mother-in-law smirked at me, her words sharp with disdain. "Leave, we don't need a wife who can't do housework. I told you to clean up earlier, didn't I?" Seemingly tipsy, she demanded that I leave immediately. My husband, with a grin on his face, joined in, thinking his support would ensure I complied quietly. I had reached my limit and no longer had the desire to exert myself for them. "Fine, I'll leave then," I said calmly as I stood to exit the living room. Behind me, I heard my mother-in-law and husband laughing, probably thinking I was just bluffing. But their reactions didn't matter to me anymore. I went to my room, packed my things, and left the house without another word. About a week later, my mother-in-law called me in a panic. "Andrew says he has no money. What does that mean?" she asked frantically. I responded with the stark truth. "Andrew earns only a third of what I do. I've been covering most of our expenses and the house is in my name. I'm planning to sell it, so you'll need to leave soon. She thought I was joking until I urged her to check the bank statements in her drawer. There was silence on the other end of the phone as the reality of the situation set in. Then the begging started. She pleaded for me to return, apologizing and saying Andrew was lonely. But I was resolute and informed her that I would be proceeding with a divorce through my lawyer. I ended the call, ignoring her tearful apologies. With legal assistance, I filed for divorce, citing the unbearable behavior of my mother-in-law and the lack of support from my husband as reasons. The divorce was granted swiftly, and I even received a small settlement. When I explained the situation to my children, they were supportive, agreeing that the fault lay squarely with my husband and his mother. After the divorce, I sold the house, and my ex-husband and his mother were forced to move out, staying with relatives temporarily. Their stay was short-lived as soon they had to find a small apartment, struggling to make ends meet on his modest income. From what I've heard, they now spend their days blaming each other for their misfortunes. Meanwhile, my husband has been sending frequent messages, asking for reconciliation, and claiming he has severed ties with his mother. However, I find these messages more of a nuisance than anything, and am considering blocking him to maintain my peace. Without their constant criticism, I feel liberated and ready to live my life on my terms, focusing on personal fulfillment and well-being. Today marks a new chapter in my life, one I thought would start under happier circumstances. With both my parents having passed away, I find myself standing before the empty space where our family home once stood, now demolished by my husband Kevin. It was here, among the remnants of my childhood memories, that Kevin shockingly revealed his true intentions. "What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? Hurry up and bring your inheritance to our house," he exclaimed. His blunt words left me speechless, yet I couldn't help but let out a burst of laughter as the absurdity of the situation dawned on me. "Ah, I see. That's what this was all about," I said, shaking my head in disbelief. My husband Kevin and his parents looked at me with incredulity, unable to comprehend my reaction. I took a moment to introduce myself again as if it might shed light on the situation. "My name is Barbara. I come from a humble background, the daughter of a hard-working salaried employee. I married Kevin when I was 28, and we raised 3 wonderful children. Now, at 50, I had hoped for a peaceful life with my husband, but life had other plans. I recounted the arduous days of caring for my ailing parents, especially my mother's grueling fight against cancer. Despite the emotional and physical toll it took on me, Kevin's support was underwhelming. He often complained about the inconvenience of living with my sick mother, critiquing everything from the meals to the housekeeping. Ultimately, we moved back to my family home to better care for my mother. Throughout this period, Kevin's indifference persisted. As her condition worsened, leading to hospitalization and eventually her passing, Kevin's detachment during the funeral preparations was disheartening. At a time when I desperately needed his support, he stood aloof, even during the funeral, opting to stay at the back among distant relatives rather than with me in the family section. "I wish you would sit with the family," I had whispered to him during the service. His reply was cold and detached. "No, I'm fine here. I'm not a blood relative after all," he said. His mother, overhearing our conversation, interjected, "He's your husband, not your mother's son. Kevin is an outsider here." Even as whispers and rumors circulated among distant relatives about our strained relationship, Kevin's parents, echoing his detachment, argued that he shouldn't sit in the family area. This adherence to custom, they claimed, was appropriate despite the obvious strain it caused. After the funeral, we gathered at my home, joined by my brother's family and Kevin's parents. Despite their earlier insensitivity, I served them coffee and maintained my composure. Their remarks about the financial burden of condolence money, however, pushed me to my limits, revealing their true feelings about the entire situation. As I stood in the ruins of my childhood home, The reality of my new life without my parents and with a partner who seemed more a stranger than a spouse became painfully clear. I managed to smile and left the room, my heart heavy as I caught snippets of Kevin and his parents' conversation. They were discussing the difficulty of living with me, their words tinged with mockery. It wasn't the first time they'd shown disrespect. It had been a theme throughout our marriage, painfully evident during my father's funeral and my mother's recent passing. Reflecting on these moments, I realized how little they cared and how much I had tolerated Kevin's disengagement, even feeling guilty about the living arrangements I had imposed on him. Their laughter echoed behind me as I overheard them criticize my refusal to let them take my mother's belongings. I had insisted that her keepsakes be distributed among our family members, a decision that sparked a fierce argument, leading Kevin and his parents to storm out, branding me as an outsider. Kevin stayed away for a while after that incident. When he returned, he surprised me by expressing concern and offering travel vouchers for a getaway for me and the kids. His sudden change in demeanor left me bewildered but grateful. "I wonder if your father felt guilty," I joked as I accepted the vouchers. Kevin, in a lighter mood than usual, encouraged me to take my time. "Yeah, stay at the kids' places if you like," he suggested, planning to unwind at his parents' home during my absence. I took him up on his suggestion, visiting my daughter Susan and my son Stephen before the trip. It had been difficult to see them while I was caring for my mother. I spent some time cooking and freezing meals for them, easing their daily burdens. "Mom, you never get to relax, but thank you. This helps," they both said, appreciative of the home-cooked meals. Thanks to Kevin's unexpected gesture, the trip finally came, and I spent a relaxing time at the hotel with my children. The break seemed to wash away some of the fatigue and sorrow from the months of caregiving and the loss of my parents. After nearly a week, we returned home with renewed spirits and bright smiles. "That was fun. We should thank Dad once in a while," Susan suggested, a sentiment that caught me off guard. "Really, once in a while," I replied, still unsure about the sudden shift in Kevin's behavior, but willing to acknowledge his effort this time. I couldn't help but chuckle, albeit with a tinge of suspicion. "But I wonder if he's up to something," I said half-jokingly. Susan quickly dismissed my doubts. "Don't say that. Your father must have had his reasons," she replied confidently. I smiled, planning to return home, share the wonderful memories with Kevin, and perhaps start afresh in our married life. However, the scene that greeted me upon my return left me speechless. "What's going on? The house is—" My voice trailed off as I took in the sight of where our family home once stood, now shockingly absent. Then Kevin appeared, his parents smirking behind him, their expressions unnervingly gleeful. "Kevin, what's the meaning of this?" I demanded, my confusion turning to anger. Kevin, mirroring his parents' unsettling smiles, responded, "Finally, the baggage is gone. From today, we'll be living with my parents at my house." His words hit me like a cold splash of water. "Why are you talking about this?" I countered, struggling to maintain my composure against Kevin's arrogant declaration. He coldly continued, "Lost your mind? Your family home has been demolished. Come to our house with the inheritance already. Everything you inherited belongs to Kevin." The truth was stark and painful. The disappearance of my house was Kevin's doing, a ploy for inheritance. Despite the overwhelming mix of frustration and sadness, I refused to let Kevin manipulate the situation. "No way," I thought to myself and burst into laughter at their smug faces. "What? Why are you laughing? What a strange woman, has she gone mad?" my mother-in-law muttered, looking at me as if I were a ghost. Facing them squarely, I declared, "Don't you guys know? I didn't inherit a single penny, so there's no inheritance." My laughter resumed, mocking their greedy assumptions. Kevin, confused and angry, demanded, "What do you mean? Explain yourself." But I chose silence. There was no need to enlighten them further. "I'm not going to live with strangers. If you want to live together, do it alone," I said firmly, rejecting his proposal outright. My mother-in-law's anger flared. "You helped with your parents' household, but you won't do ours?" she accused. You know why I did that, right? I agreed to live together, didn't I? But you chose to do so because you didn't want to do housework, I retorted, leaving Kevin and his mother biting their lips in frustration. And demolishing my family home on your own? There are things you can and can't do, I yelled at them, the betrayal cutting deep. Without another word, I left the scene, Kevin's voice trailing after me. Where are you going? But I didn't look back. I needed to secure a place to sleep for the night and couldn't bear to see Kevin's face any longer. Immediately, I consulted a lawyer. It couldn't be that easy to demolish a house, especially one still in my mother's name. Upon investigation, an unbelievable truth came to light. Kevin and my father-in-law had orchestrated the demolition themselves, utilizing acquaintances from my father-in-law's demolition company and renting heavy machinery. They had even given me the travel vouchers to conveniently get me out of the way. The realization of such deceit brought tears to my eyes and filled me with a profound sense of betrayal. Is there any way to punish the three of them? I asked the lawyer through tears, desperate for justice. The lawyer gave me a reassuring smile as he laid out the legal options. Your husband, who demolished the house registered under your mother's name without permission, can be charged with criminal damage and sued for compensation, he explained. Encouraged, I nodded, and he promptly began the legal proceedings. A few days later, an irate call from Kevin interrupted my thoughts. What's this letter of demand about? He demanded. Oh, you received it. Since you destroyed our important house, you'll have to compensate, I replied calmly, despite my rising anger. Compensate? I told you we were moving into the family home. I demolished an unused house for you. You should be grateful, not demanding compensation. Just bring your inheritance and come back home, Kevin insisted arrogantly. Grateful? For having our home demolished? Really? I scoffed over the phone. And about the inheritance and coming home, there's none to bring since I didn't inherit anything, I shouted back, my frustration evident. Kevin fell silent, caught off guard by my outburst. The reason I laughed when the house was demolished was because of this. I had a whole year to spend with my mother. It was obvious we would have discussed the inheritance, I continued. I told her I don't need anything, give it all to my brother. Thus, all cash and securities were inherited by my brother. He said that I should get the house since he lived far away and couldn't manage it. If I wasn't going to live there, it could be rented out to someone else. That was the plan for me to inherit the house. Now, either you and your father restore the family home to its original state or pay the amount written in that letter. I'm being kind enough to suggest a settlement. If you can't pay, I'll file a police report and sue you. I spoke firmly. Sorry, I didn't think you'd be so angry, Kevin replied, his tone changing. He began making excuses, suggesting that as long as the family home was there, he couldn't live with his parents, especially since his father had always wanted to live with us. My father-in-law was particularly fond of my son Stephen and had previously expressed a desire to live with him. They had refused to live together back then because it would have made commuting difficult, but his parents seemed to think I was the one opposed to it. It turns out that Kevin had convinced his parents to agree to this plan by demolishing my family home and making them believe I would move in with the inheritance. This revelation only added to my resolve to see this legal battle through, ensuring that justice was served for the unwarranted destruction of my family home. Even with Kevin's new revelation, forgiveness was far beyond my grasp. Please forgive me. I didn't mean any harm. Dad is remorseful too, Kevin pleaded over the phone. If he's truly remorseful, then he'll agree to the settlement, I responded firmly before hanging up. Despite his continual apologies through calls and messages, insisting he was sorry, I remained steadfast. If you're sorry, then hurry up and transfer the money, I pushed back, knowing well that our beloved family home was beyond restoration, but seeking some form of reparation for the deep hurt caused. In the meantime, I stayed at my brother's place with Susan. My brother, aware of the situation and likely furious about the demolition, done without his consent, supported my stance. I won't interfere, but I'll lend a hand. Do what you think is right, Barbara, he encouraged. Everyone around me condemned Kevin's reckless actions and supported me through this ordeal. A month passed with no compensation, and during that time, Kevin ceased all contact. I couldn't impose on Susan's hospitality indefinitely and was eager to secure the promised funds to stabilize my living situation. However, a startling discovery interrupted these plans. One day Susan, looking at her smartphone, remarked, "This apron looks a lot like Grandma's." She showed me the screen. It was a product page on a flea market app. The item resembled a unique apron I had made for my mother. "What? This is Grandma's apron. I made it, so there's no mistake," I said, shocked. Susan scrolled through other listings, and we found nearly 50 items that unmistakably belonged to my mother. It was clear to me that Kevin was behind this. Furious, I called him immediately. "What's this about the app, Kevin?" I demanded. He sounded annoyed and feigned ignorance. "Don't play dumb. You're selling Mom's belongings, aren't you? Cancel the listings right now," I confronted him. Kevin, sounding panicked, denied everything. "What? No, it's not me," he stammered. Undeterred, I retorted, "Who else would do such a thing? I'm coming over to get everything back." Susan and I drove to Kevin's parents' house. Upon arrival, I called out for Kevin, who met us at the entrance, visibly flustered. "I don't know anything about it," he insisted. Susan, supporting me, pressed him for answers. While this was happening, Kevin's parents, likely aware of our presence, came outside. His mother, seeing Susan, greeted her with a smile, seemingly oblivious to the tension. "Susan, you're here," she said cheerfully. Susan, clearly upset, urged her grandmother. "Tell Dad to tell the truth." "The truth? It seems like Dad is selling the stuff Grandma passed away with," Susan disclosed. Hearing this, my mother-in-law laughed, dismissing the accusation. Kevin looked increasingly troubled, repeating, "It's not me." Then his mother interjected loudly, "Kevin's selling them? That can't be true." The situation escalated quickly as we confronted the tangled web of deceit, hoping to reclaim what was rightfully ours and uncover the truth behind the distressing sales. The revelation from my mother-in-law left me stunned and drained of color. "But I'm the one selling them," she cheerfully admitted, oblivious to the gravity of her actions. Kevin glanced at his mother with a worried look, clearly aware of the brewing storm. Susan beside me was equally shocked, her eyes wide with disbelief. "What did you say?" I managed to utter, struggling to keep my voice steady. My mother-in-law, undeterred, continued to explain her new hobby with a light-hearted air. "It's quite a task, you know. Packaging has to be done carefully, and the photos need to be taken well," she said, treating the whole ordeal as if it were a fun pastime. She seemed completely unaware that she was handling and selling stolen goods. My frustration boiled over. "Cancel the listing! That's not something Grandma can just sell!" Susan implored, her voice breaking as she tried to reason with her grandmother. But my mother-in-law dismissed her pleas casually. "What's the big deal? I found a fun hobby. I use what I can, and the rest makes a nice little income. It's good for preventing dementia after all. I'm the only grandma left, and Susan, you want me to stay healthy and live long, right?" she retorted, her tone flippant and dismissive. It was clear she wouldn't listen to our pleas. Realizing that talking would get us nowhere, I took decisive action. "Let's go home, Susan. But first we need to address this properly," I said, pulling a reluctant Susan with me as we left the house and headed straight to the police station. I had not initially planned to involve the police in the house demolition, but theft and unauthorized sale were a different matter entirely. The officers were prompt in their response, and the flea market app company cooperated by suspending my mother-in-law's account, ensuring no more items would be sold. After leaving the police station, I called Kevin. "I had your mother's account suspended. You knew about this, didn't you? You're complicit. Also, I filed a police report. Please cooperate with the investigation," I asserted firmly. Kevin, frantic, tried to plead family ties. "We're family, aren't we? Please withdraw it." "Stranger, right? I still haven't received any compensation or damages for the house being demolished. And I see no remorse from you," I countered, my anger evident. Despite my frustrations, I wasn't devoid of compassion. Having shared many years with Kevin, I sighed, acknowledging the long and possibly rocky path ahead in resolving these issues. I'll wait for the money, but I won't forgive the theft. Everything must be returned. And Kevin, your father looked very ill. Has he been to the hospital? I inquired, a part of me still concerned for his well-being despite everything. I had seen my father-in-law earlier, and he looked significantly thinner and unwell compared to just a few months ago. It seemed unlikely that the family had even noticed his declining health amidst their other preoccupations. The next day, my father-in-law called, not to express gratitude but to scold me. You're treating me like a sick person, planning to dump me in a hospital to get rid of me. I have to protect Kevin and your mother. I'm not going to any hospital, he protested. His response to my genuine concern stung. I apologize if it was out of line. I was just concerned. I'm not weak and short-lived like your parents. Don't patronize me, he snapped back, his words harsh and dismissive. His reaction only added to the complexity of our already strained relationship, leaving me to navigate these turbulent family dynamics with care and resolve. A few days after our conversation, my father-in-law's health declined significantly, leading him to seek medical attention. The diagnosis was terminal cancer. Kevin, in a state of panic, called me. Dad has terminal cancer. What should I do? He asked, his voice laden with anxiety. I responded coolly, remembering past grievances. That's none of my concern. Remember what you said when I suggested the hospital? You said you're not weak and short-lived like my parents. Deal with it yourself. How can you be so heartless? Kevin retorted. Who's the heartless one? Did you ever say a kind word when my mother was sick? Reflect on your actions. I snapped back and ended the call. Sadly, my father-in-law passed away shortly after. As a human being, I didn't want to harbor resentment towards someone who had passed away, but recalling all that had transpired, I found myself unable to mourn him genuinely. After the funeral, a will was discovered. It detailed that the house would be inherited by my grandson, Stephen, and the remainder of the estate was to be divided between Kevin's mother and Kevin. I was surprised to see Stephen named in the will. My father-in-law had always favored him, perhaps hoping Stephen would continue to live in the house. Despite the inheritance potentially being more of a burden due to taxes and maintenance, Stephen was pleased to inherit the house. Although I had concerns, it wasn't my place to interfere. Stephen's inheritance proceeded, and my mother-in-law, delighted, paid the inheritance taxes, claiming it was all worth it for her grandson. Despite my mixed feelings about the situation, I didn't say anything further. Then, something unexpected happened. Responding to a message from Kevin, I visited his parents' house. Arriving there, I was met with a shocking sight. Heavy machinery and demolition workers were tearing down the house. It's my house. I can do whatever I want with it, right? Stephen declared, seemingly unbothered by the destruction. Stephen, what are you doing? Stop it right now, I cried out, my heart sinking. Even if I stop now, we can't live there anyway, Mom, Stephen responded calmly. My mother-in-law and Kevin, witnessing the destruction of what was once a significant asset, pleaded with Stephen to stop, but he was resolute. Have you forgotten what Grandpa and Dad did to Mom? Grandma, you were horrible to her too, right? Did you apologize? Stephen's tone was sharp, his earlier calmness replaced by a stern demeanor. His words cut deep, and both Kevin and his mother were visibly shaken, kneeling as the machines loudly continued their work. Witnessing the scene, I felt a complex mix of emotions, but ultimately a sense of relief. It seemed that Stephen, in his way, was settling scores, correcting past wrongs against our family. Later, Kevin, having finally received his inheritance, paid the compensation and damages owed to me. Stephen had also managed to recover the stolen items my mother-in-law took from my mother, ensuring their safe return. Mom, you've got me and Susan, Stephen reassured me. And in that moment, overwhelmed by the support of my children, I finally allowed myself to shed tears of relief. Kevin and his mother, having lost their house and now with limited resources, moved back into company housing and their fortunes dramatically reversed. Through it all, the bond between Stephen and Susan remained our strongest asset, a source of mutual support and love in the face of adversity. Now, Kevin and his mother had become the subject of local gossip after moving back into company housing. A wife of one of Kevin's colleagues, with whom I have a friendly relationship, reached out to me. I shared the entire backstory with her honestly. Given Kevin's upcoming retirement, it seemed that they would need to be frugal about their future living arrangements. They might find living in company housing uncomfortable, but it was a situation of their own making. Occasionally, I thought of asking friends for updates on Kevin and his mother, more out of curiosity and to have a story to share than anything else. Meanwhile, I continued staying with Susan, but changes were on the horizon. Stephen, now in a much better place financially thanks to the sale of the land where his parents' house once stood, was planning to get married and build a new home. The proceeds from the land had turned out to be surprisingly substantial, rendering the demolished house unexpectedly beneficial. "Mom, come live with us," Stephen had invited me warmly, his soon-to-be wife echoing his invitation with genuine enthusiasm. Knowing I couldn't stay with Susan indefinitely, I gratefully accepted their offer. I was determined to be a different kind of mother-in-law, one who nurtured and supported her family without overstepping. With this new chapter on the horizon, I looked forward to building a happy life with my expanding family, filled with love and mutual respect. Standing before Cheryl, I calmly announced my decision. "I'm moving back in with my parents. If this doesn't sit well with you, then perhaps we should consider divorce," I said, my voice stripped of emotion. Cheryl stared back at me, shock and confusion playing across her face as she struggled to grasp the boldness of my statement. It felt like a harsh blow to her. "What are you talking about, Raymond?" She faltered, her voice a blend of disbelief and dismay. "It's quite straightforward," I continued, my gaze icy and detached. "We could use your $7 million inheritance to build our new home there. That's what I'm proposing." A knot of tension formed in Cheryl's stomach. The inheritance, her mother's final gift, had suddenly become a pawn in my plan. "You can't be serious," she whispered, barely audible. "But I am completely serious, Cheryl. It's time for some changes," I asserted sharply, cutting through the air. Visions of our shared life, filled with laughter, love, and the milestones of our children flashed through her mind. How had our paths veered so off course? At 35, a mother of two, Cheryl thought she had been living an ordinary life with a man she once loved deeply. Now, I stood before her transformed, unrecognizable. "You have no right to dictate how my inheritance is used," she protested, her voice quivering with a mix of anger and disbelief. "As your husband, I believe I do have a say. It's either my way or the highway. Make your decision, Cheryl," I declared, my tone brooking no argument. She searched my face for a glimpse of the man she once knew but found only a stranger with greedy eyes fixed on her inheritance. Realizing the depth of the deception, she found herself overshadowed by the man she no longer recognized, her marriage revealed as a sham. "Fine," she said, her voice remarkably steady amid the emotional turmoil. "If that's what you want, then we're done." But I warned him, "Don't expect to touch a single cent of my money." My smirk disappeared, replaced by a look of utter shock. I hadn't seen this coming. Spinning on my heel, I stormed out and slammed the door behind me. Cheryl stood alone, her heart racing. The lines were now clearly drawn. This was no longer merely about money, but her dignity, her freedom. The next morning, the house was unnervingly quiet. As Cheryl prepared breakfast, scenes from last night's confrontation replayed in her mind, fueling a growing anger. How could I be so insensitive? The money wasn't just some jackpot, it was part of her mother's legacy, not a fund for me to recklessly spend. Our children, Lisa and Mark, picked up in the tense atmosphere but stayed silent. They were too young to grasp the complexities of adult problems, yet they could tell something was off. Cheryl managed a smile for their sake. After dropping them off at school, she drove to her late mother's house, now empty but filled with echoes of the past. Sitting in the living room, she remembered how my parents often made snide comments about their lifestyle, choices, and even their kids. They had always clung to traditional gender roles, and it seemed I had absorbed these archaic views. "I can't understand why you're still working," my mother had once sneered, her disdain clear. "A woman's place is at home with the children?" I, Raymond, never defended her. I always dismissed my parents' offensive remarks, telling her to just ignore them. But those words were like needles, constantly pricking at Cheryl's self-esteem. Now, with her mother gone and our marriage unraveling, she felt a surge of resentment towards me. I had never truly been a partner to her, leaving her to fend for herself against my parents' criticisms without ever taking her side. She vividly recalled being pregnant with Lisa and how my parents had openly hoped for a grandson. When Lisa was born, their disappointment was unmistakable. "Next time, make sure it's a boy," they had said. Alone in the quiet of the house, Cheryl's resolve hardened. She knew what she had to do. Barely concealing their displeasure, they expressed their dissatisfaction openly. The pain of watching my daughter endure such blatant favoritism was unbearable. Now Raymond wanted us to use my inheritance to move closer to his parents, plunging us deeper into their toxic environment. The very thought made my blood boil. I was determined not to let that happen. As I sat amidst the remnants of my mother's life, I felt a resolve building within me. I refused to be pushed around. I decided to stand up, not only for myself, but also for my children. Raymond had shown his true colors, and it was time he faced the consequences. The battle lines were drawn, and I was prepared for the struggle ahead. Over the next few days, I gathered important documents and braced for the legal fight that loomed. My lawyer, a sharp-witted woman named Gloria, was reassuring. "Don't worry, Cheryl. We'll make sure that inheritance stays right where it belongs," she said with a confident smile. One evening, as I sorted through my mother's belongings, I discovered an old, dusty envelope hidden in a drawer. Inside, I found a collection of documents, stock certificates, and property deeds. My hands trembled as I grasped the full extent of my mother's hidden wealth, which, including the current value of the stocks and properties, amounted to a staggering $7 million. I was in awe. My mother, who had always lived modestly, had accumulated a small fortune. She had been incredibly prudent with her money, a fact that now offered a new ray of hope and strength. I never imagined that my mother had saved so much. An accompanying note penned in her neat handwriting read, "Cheryl, I saved this for a rainy day. I hope it gives you and the kids a better life. Use it wisely." As I read her words, tears filled my eyes. Her foresight and love enveloped me like a warm embrace, transcending even from beyond the grave. The next day, I resolved to confront Raymond about his ill-conceived plan to misuse my inheritance. I found him in the living room, casually browsing through a magazine. "Raymond, we need to talk," I said, my voice firm and composed. He looked up, irritation flickering in his eyes. "What is it now, Cheryl?" "I found something from my mother," I started, waving the envelope. "It turns out she left me stocks and properties worth $7 million. Raymond's eyes widened, a mixture of shock and greed quickly passing over his face. $7 million? That's great news, he exclaimed, but his enthusiasm repulsed me. "Don't get any ideas, Raymond. This money is for me and the kids. You won't see a cent of it." His face darkened. "You can't keep it all to yourself, Cheryl. We're married. What's yours is mine," he snapped back. Anger surged within me. "You've shown your true colors, Raymond. You don't care about me or the kids. All you see are dollar signs." Raymond stood abruptly, his face flushed with anger. "You're being selfish, Cheryl. I'm thinking about our future, about our family." "What family, Raymond? The one you're ready to sacrifice for your selfish desires?" I retorted. He stepped closer, fists clenched. "You'll regret this, Cheryl. I'll make sure of it." I stood my ground unflinching. "Bring it on, Raymond. I'm not afraid of you anymore." He stormed out, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I knew this was just the beginning of a long and bitter battle, but I was ready for my children, for my mother's legacy, and myself. The following week was a whirlwind of legal consultations and tense silences at home. Raymond's demeanor had shifted from shock to cold, calculated aggression. He was like a caged animal, desperate and dangerous. One evening, while the kids slept, Raymond cornered me in the kitchen. His eyes wild, his stance threatening, he accused, "You think you're clever, Cheryl, hiding that money from me?" I leaned against the counter, my heart pounding, prepared for whatever would come next. But my voice remained steady. "It's not about being clever, Raymond. It's about doing what's right. That money is for me and the kids, not for your unrealistic dreams." He slammed his fist on the countertop, making me flinch. "I am your husband. I have rights to that money," he claimed, his words dripping with venom. "You're just a—" he started, but I interrupted him. "A what, Raymond? A woman who refuses to submit to your greed and bullying?" His face twisted in anger. "You'll regret this, Cheryl. I'll make sure you don't get a dime of that money." I could sense the danger in his words, but refused to show any fear. "Is that a threat, Raymond?" I asked. He leaned in, his breath foul. "It's a promise." I pushed past him, my body shaking with adrenaline. "We'll see about that. The court will decide." As I walked away, his voice filled with malice followed me. "You're going to be left with nothing, Cheryl. Nothing." The next day, I received a call from my lawyer. "Cheryl, Raymond has filed for divorce. He's claiming half of your inheritance." I took a deep breath, a mix of fear and determination stirring within me. "Let him try. I'll fight him every step of the way." Gloria's voice was firm. "We have a strong case, Cheryl. Don't worry. We'll make sure justice is served." That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about my children sleeping peacefully in their rooms. I dedicated myself to this battle for them, for their future. Raymond had become a stranger, a man driven by greed and malice, yet I was no longer the woman he thought he could control and intimidate. As I closed my eyes, I envisioned the courtroom, the judge, and the final verdict. I pictured myself standing tall, fighting vigorously, not just for the money, but for my dignity, my children's future, and the quiet strength my mother had always shown. This was my battle, and I was fully prepared for it. The ensuing legal battle was grueling. Raymond's strategy was transparent, to portray me as an uncooperative wife, hoarding the family's resources. But how could he understand? However, his arguments were weak, more a display of desperation than a solid legal foundation. One afternoon, we found ourselves in mediation, a last effort to resolve matters before the court hearing. Raymond sat across from me, his lawyer by his side, his gaze icy and demeanor self-assured. "Let's be reasonable, Cheryl," his lawyer started. "Raymond is entitled to a part of this inheritance. It's only fair." I looked over at Gloria, my determination unwavering. "Fair? Raymond has not contributed to this inheritance. It is solely from my late mother, intended for me and my children." Raymond leaned forward, his tone derisive. "Come on, Cheryl, you're just being spiteful. Don't you think the kids would want their father to have a share?" I felt a rush of anger. "This isn't about spite, Raymond. It's about justice. You've never genuinely considered what the kids want. This is about your greed." His lawyer started to interject, but Raymond signaled him to stop. "You think you can just take everything, don't you? Play the grieving daughter and the victimized wife," he sneered. I met his gaze squarely. "This isn't a game, Raymond. You're the one trying to take what isn't yours." The mediator, a stern-faced, middle-aged woman, interjected, "Let's try to remain civil. This is about finding a resolution." Raymond cut her off, his voice rising. "A resolution? She's the one being unreasonable." The tension in the room was palpable, thick, and suffocating. I responded calmly yet firmly. "I am being perfectly reasonable. I'm protecting what my mother left for her grandchildren." Raymond's claims are baseless. Sensing the futility of the discussion, the mediator called for a break. As we stood up, Raymond leaned in close, his breath hot on my ear. "You'll pay for this, Cheryl. I'll make sure of it." His words were a chilling promise, but I remained resolved to stand my ground for the legacy and the rights of my children. I exited the mediation room, my heart pounding yet my resolve firm. Raymond's threats rang hollow. His legal standing was weak. Confident that the law was on my side, I dedicated myself wholeheartedly to the battle ahead. In the weeks leading up to the court hearing, I buried myself in legal preparations with Gloria. The kids stayed with my sister, spared from the worst of the upheaval. I missed them deeply, but I understood that this struggle was not just for my benefit, but for their future as well. The day of the court hearing finally arrived. As I stood in the courtroom, I steeled myself to face Raymond and counter any misleading story he might present. This was the pivotal moment, and I was ready to fight with every fiber of my being. The courtroom transformed into a battleground where words served as weapons, and Raymond's lawyer spun a narrative of a husband wronged, deprived of his rightful share. Yet, under Gloria's adept questioning, his claims quickly fell apart, disintegrating like a house of cards. During a recess, Raymond confronted me in the hallway, his expression contorted with rage. "You're ruining everything, Cheryl. You think you're going to walk away with all that money?" he hissed. Despite the fear that nibbled at my resolve, I stood firm. "It's not your money, Raymond. It never was." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "I'll drag this out as long as it takes. I'll bleed you dry with legal fees." Meeting his intense gaze, I responded with unwavering firmness. "Do what you must, but I won't let you bully me into submission." As we re-entered the courtroom, a wave of empowerment surged through me. Raymond's threat seemed more hollow than ever. His bravado was merely a facade for his desperation. When the final verdict was delivered, it was a vindication of my rights. The judge declared the inheritance solely mine, acknowledging my legal and moral claim to it. Raymond's face, as the judgment was read, mirrored the defeat of his case, a reflection of a battle fought and lost on his part. However, the victory was bittersweet. I had won the legal battle, but at the cost of my marriage. The family dynamic I had cherished was now fractured. In the weeks that followed, Raymond's life began to unravel. His reputation, once built on a foundation of lies and intimidation, crumbled. The community started to see him for the greedy individual who had tried to exploit his wife's inheritance. Rumors reached me about his myriad struggles, losing his job, his friends, and his standing in the community. It was a dramatic fall from grace, and despite everything, I felt a sense of poetic justice. One evening, a mutual acquaintance called. "Cheryl, have you heard about Raymond?" they asked. I hesitated, then replied, "No, what about him?" "He's moving out of town, lost his job, his house. He's pretty much broke." A complex emotion welled up inside me, not quite satisfaction, but something akin to it. Raymond had reaped what he sowed. He had aimed to destroy me, but ended up destroying himself instead. After hanging up, I looked at a picture of my children on the mantel. This fight had been for them, for their future and security. That night, as I tucked them into bed, I felt a profound sense of peace. The battle was over, and we had emerged stronger. We were finally free from Raymond's shadow, ready to start a new chapter. Our lives would be different, but we would be okay. We were together, and that was what mattered most. In the months following the court ruling, life found a new rhythm. The court victory granted me a sense of closure and a fresh start. The victory in court wasn't just an end. It marked the beginning of a new journey, one of healing and rebuilding. I decided it was time to sell the house, the backdrop of so many bitter memories. Each item I packed symbolized a step away from my past with Raymond, a deliberate stride toward a better future for Lisa and Mark. One day, while sorting through old boxes in the attic, I stumbled upon a photograph of Raymond and me in happier times. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to grieve for the life I thought we had, the love I believed was real. But as I stared at his smiling face in the photo, I realized that the man I had married no longer existed. He had revealed his true nature, and it was far from the image captured in that picture. With a sense of finality, I tossed the photo into the trash bin, a symbolic gesture of letting go. Moving to a new town offered us a fresh start. I found a cozy home in a friendly neighborhood, and the kids quickly settled into their new school, making friends easily. I turned more attention to my writing, finding solace and expression in the worlds I created with my words. One evening, as I was tucking Lisa into bed, she looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes and asked, "Mom, do you miss Dad?" Her question caught me off guard. "Sometimes I miss who I thought your dad was," I admitted. "But we're better off now. We're a strong team, just the three of us." She nodded, her eyes showing a depth beyond her years. "I like it here, Mom. I like our new home." Her words filled me with warmth. We had indeed come a long way. As I lay in bed that night, I reflected on Raymond's downfall. His greed and malice had backfired spectacularly, leaving him with nothing. Yet here we were, rebuilding and finding joy in our new life, stronger and more united than ever. While I felt no joy in Raymond's misfortunes, there was a palpable sense of justice in how everything had unfolded. The kids and I had a lengthy journey of healing ahead, but we were firmly on the path. The inheritance, now securely invested, would ensure their education, and our future needs were well taken care of. As I closed my eyes, thoughts of my mother came to me. Her strength and foresight had truly been our salvation. In her wisdom, she had equipped me with the means to protect myself and my children. Drifting off to sleep, I was enveloped by a profound sense of peace. The storm that had once threatened to consume us had passed, leaving behind clarity and hope. We had weathered the worst, and now, with a new day dawning, we were ready to embrace whatever lay ahead with renewed spirit and optimism. I'm happily settled in life, having married into a wealthy family, while Mason mockingly remarked on my seemingly simple lifestyle. As we sat in the hotel lobby, his sharp voice cut through my calm, taunting me with his latest update. He boasted about his new wife, who is none other than the daughter of the president of Goldsmith Enterprises. Mason's laughter, tinged with pride, filled the air, but it was the mention of Goldsmith Enterprises that grabbed my attention. I knew that name, but couldn't quite place it at first. Then it clicked. Mason continued to gloat, unaware of the humor I found in his boasting. "My name is Patricia, and I'm 37, living contentedly with my husband Mason. I work in my family's real estate business, handling mostly administrative duties while my father, the president, oversees major strategies. As an only child, I'm expected to one day lead the company. Despite the looming responsibility, I maintain a careful balance between my personal and professional life, especially around Mason. He completed high school and works for a moving company, a demanding job that I respect. To avoid making him feel inadequate, I rarely discuss my university degree or my anticipated future as president of the company. Mason and I met through a mutual friend during college. After my friend's move, handled by Mason's company, she introduced us. Initially, Mason was interested in her, but after she turned him down, we got to know each other. His easygoing nature complemented my meticulousness, and our relationship flourished. We married in our late 20s after a brief courtship. Our marriage has been smooth, bolstered by the warm acceptance of Mason's parents, a refreshing contrast to the typical in-law challenges some of my friends face. Despite Mason's demanding job, often keeping him out until late, physically exhausting him, he remained committed to our marriage. Even on his toughest days, he'd express gratitude as I waited up to share dinner with him. I felt fortunate to have such a devoted husband, but after a year of marriage, our peaceful life began to show signs of strain. One night, as we settled into bed, Mason unexpectedly brought up the topic of having children. His tone was tinged with irritation, catching me off guard. I had thought about starting a family too, and though we weren't actively trying, I believed it would happen naturally with time. I reassured him, "It's only been a year, there's no rush." I wanted children, but I knew stressing about it wouldn't help. To calm the situation, I adopted a relaxed demeanor, but Mason, more assertive than usual, quoted statistics. "You know, there's about a 90% chance of conceiving within a year for couples not using contraception." Not well versed in such specifics, that figure sounded surprisingly high to me. "If you're concerned, maybe we should both get tested," I suggested, thinking it wise to address any potential issues together. However, Mason's reaction was unexpectedly harsh. "What are you implying, that it's my fault? Usually it's the woman's fault," he retorted, his tone filled with contempt. It was the first time he'd spoken to me this way. I hadn't accused him of anything. I merely suggested a joint approach to find clarity. Yet, Mason concluded I was blaming him and added, "It's definitely the woman's fault," as if to underline that I was the problem. I wanted to respond, but I was too shaken, barely managing to reply. "Of course. So just you get tested. I'm too busy with work. I have a job too, you know. You're just coasting along in your dad's company," he snapped. His words stung. I never just coasted, although my role involved many administrative tasks. I was actively learning management skills from my father in preparation to lead the company someday. That night, any attempt at discussion was met with curt replies, and we fell asleep with our backs turned in silence, a heavy air hanging between us. From then on, Mason's attitude toward me shifted drastically. Returning home late one evening after a discussion about the future with my father, I found Mason irate over dinner not being ready. "I'm sorry, I just got home 15 minutes ago. I'll start cooking now. Just wait a little, please," I hurriedly explained, but Mason dismissed it. That's typical of a small company's boss's daughter. He didn't realize the scale of my father's business, a significant real estate company with hundreds of employees. His assumptions and the increasing bitterness made navigating our daily lives more challenging, casting a shadow over what had once been a loving and supportive relationship. Arguing seemed pointless as I hurried to the kitchen, promising Mason I'd cook immediately. "Have a drink and relax while you wait," I suggested, knowing how alcohol seemed to soothe him. It saddened me that our relationship had come to rely on his evening drinks to avoid tension. I despised being scolded, but if it helped keep peace, even temporarily, I reluctantly saw it as a necessary evil. The next day, Mason's cold demeanor lingered as he left for work, his parting words sharp. "Make sure dinner's ready when I get home." I exhaled deeply, my mind on the day ahead. I had scheduled a day off to visit the gynecologist for fertility testing, something Mason had insisted on, though he refused to participate himself. It was frustrating to go through this alone, but complaining wouldn't help. If the problem lay with me, I wanted to start treatment immediately. Understanding that fertility could decline with age, I was eager to address any issues soon. The clinic was crowded, and I waited an hour before my examination. After a series of tests, the doctor informed me that the results would be available at my next appointment. The possibility that I might be the one with fertility issues was daunting, but I was ready to take whatever steps were necessary. When Mason returned home that evening, I told him, "I went for the fertility test today." His response was curt. "Figures. If the problem's with you, it's good you're getting tested. Let me know the results." His assumption that I was to blame for our difficulties in conceiving was hurtful. 6 years passed, and I turned 37. Our attempts to have a child continued without success, and it seemed Mason had resigned himself to not becoming a father. His late nights became more frequent, and sometimes he didn't come home at all. When he did, he'd say he was out drinking and singing karaoke until dawn. His behavior reminded me more of a carefree college student than a committed husband, which was incredibly frustrating. My work had become more demanding, and the dream of starting a family had to be sidelined. But Mason's recent actions were becoming intolerable. His disregard for our life together was painfully obvious. One day, after Mason left the house on his day off, I noticed he had forgotten his smartphone in the living room. I picked it up, intending to place it in his room, but it rang just then. The caller ID displayed a name, Diana. Assuming she was a colleague, I answered to let her know Mason had left his phone at home. "Hey, Mason, you're late. I've been waiting for 50 minutes. Hurry up or we'll miss the park opening. We haven't had a date in so long," a flirtatious voice said from the other end. The mention of a date stunned me, and I quickly hung up, my heart racing. This woman wasn't just a colleague. She was someone Mason was seeing romantically. Holding his phone, proof of his infidelity clenched in my hand, I felt a mix of shock and anger. While I struggled with potential infertility, Mason had been carelessly engaging in an affair. His recent distance suddenly made sense, and I stood there trembling with indescribable anger at the betrayal. Realizing that Mason no longer needed me in his life was a devastating blow, but discovering his betrayal made the situation even more unbearable. Determined to confront the issue head-on, I began gathering evidence of his infidelity. Unlocking his smartphone using his birth date was effortless. The call history and messages were dominated by exchanges with someone named Diana, full of affectionate and intimate words that turned my stomach. I meticulously documented everything, taking photos with my phone before returning his device to its usual spot, acting as if nothing had changed. A month passed in this eerie state of our fractured marriage until one day, my father, the president of our company, called me into his office. "I have something important to discuss with you," he said solemnly. His grave tone caught me off guard, and I braced myself for serious news, which only compounded the stress I was already feeling. That evening, perhaps sensing the inevitable, Mason suggested that we consider separating. I was already contemplating how to address the divorce given his infidelity, so his initiation was unexpectedly convenient. "Yes, let's divorce," I agreed quickly. Mason seemed taken aback by my readiness, possibly hopeful about his future with Diana. Despite the sting of seeing his relief, I signed the divorce papers he presented. "I can file these tomorrow. I'll be leaving this house," he said nonchalantly. "Are you sure about the mortgage?" I asked casually, suspecting that he hadn't fully considered his financial situation without me. His job was demanding but not lucrative, and I doubted his ability to manage the mortgage payments on his own. Nevertheless, he was confident, or perhaps just naive. Given his betrayal, I felt no obligation to ease his transition. I moved back to my parents' house a few days later. They were initially worried about my well-being, but became furious when I explained Mason's infidelity. They supported my decision to leave him, reassuring me repeatedly that parting ways was the best course of action. Throwing myself into work, I tried to move past the emotional turmoil of my failed marriage. A year flew by in a blur of commitments and projects. One evening, seeing how engrossed and tired I had become, my father suggested a break. "Why don't you take a trip? It's going to get busy starting next month," he advised, concerned about my well-being. Grateful for the suggestion and feeling mentally exhausted, I decided to take a solo trip to the Northeast, craving a change of scenery and some peace. The air in the Northeast was crisp and refreshing, seeming to cleanse my weary soul. I interacted with locals who were incredibly kind and helpful, gradually mending my spirit. I booked a stay in Los Angeles at a renowned hotel, deciding to indulge in the best experience possible. After checking in, I relaxed in the lobby with a welcome drink, the fatigue from my journey melting away. I felt so at peace that I half joked about moving to Los Angeles. Just then, a familiar voice pierced through the calm. Hey, what are you doing here?" I turned, startled, to find Mason entering the lobby with 2 large suitcases. The unexpected encounter with my ex-husband was the last thing I anticipated on this healing journey. Surrounded by the elegant charm of the Los Angeles hotel lobby, I felt a sudden jolt of reality as I spotted Mason entering with a young woman on his arm. She looked to be in her early 20s with flawless skin, bold makeup, and striking red nails that contrasted sharply against the chilly northeastern weather. Her attire was bold too, a short skirt despite the cold. My eyes locked onto them in disbelief. "Why are you here? And who is she?" I couldn't help but blurt out, my curiosity getting the better of me despite my doubts about wanting the answers. "Oh, let me introduce you," Mason said with a hint of excitement I hadn't seen in a long time. "This is Diana, my new wife. We're on our honeymoon, and guess what? She's the daughter of a wealthy businessman." The name Diana hit me like a wave. She was the same Diana from the phone call months ago. I felt a surge of discomfort at his obvious pride in marrying someone so much younger and wealthily connected. "You're here alone? That's sad," Mason sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. Beside him, Diana eyed me with a smirk. "Hey, Mason, is this your ex-wife? She looks old. Hurry up with the check-in," she said, her tone sharp. Irritated, I managed to keep my composure as Mason nonchalantly draped an arm around her, boasting, "Yeah, I'm set for life now, marrying into money. You keep struggling in your modest life." Mason's high-pitched laugh cut through the serene atmosphere of the lobby, a stark contrast to the tranquility I had been enjoying. He continued to flaunt his new life. "Yeah, Diana is Goldsmith's daughter. You know, Goldsmith Enterprises," he added, seeming overly proud. The mention of Goldsmith Enterprises rang a bell. I recalled it just as Mason's face lit up with a childlike glee. "Impressive, huh? Her family's loaded. They even paid off our house mortgage quickly. Thanks for making the divorce easy, Patricia," he said sarcastically. "Yeah, I know them. They're in that big building downtown, right?" "I've been there," I replied calmly, barely fazed by his remarks. Mason looked surprised. "Oh, you've been there? Well, her family owns a huge company, so breaking up with you was the right choice." He smirked maliciously. I nodded, still calm. "That building? It's part of our real estate holdings," I mentioned casually, as if recalling a minor detail. "What do you mean, our real estate?" Mason and Diana chimed in together, both perplexed. "That building is rented by my father for his most prestigious office. I'm not sure if your company is involved in real estate, but it's certainly not a shabby building," I explained with a serene tone. Their skepticism was palpable. I paused, knowing there was no turning back. "Yes, I know how grand it is. I was there when my father purchased that building for about $500 million. Recently, he was complaining about a tenant not paying their rent. Turns out it was your company. In fact, my father is a real estate magnate with assets worth $5 billion, and that building is one of them. Goldsmith Enterprises has been the tenant for the past few months, and they hadn't paid their rent," I revealed, watching their reactions closely. Diana burst out laughing, disbelief written all over her face. "That can't be true. Our company's doing great," she claimed, still laughing, but the shock in her eyes told a different story. Despite the shock of seeing Mason with his new wife, I was determined not to be drawn into their drama. Yet Diana's loud claims that their company could surely pay the rent echoed around us, hinting at denial or deceit. Her tone was dismissive, suggesting I was lying just to create discord between her and Mason. Realizing a simple conversation wouldn't suffice, I pulled out my smartphone right there in the hotel lobby. "I'm here with the daughter of Goldsmith Enterprises," I told my dad over the phone. "Can you send me a photo of the rent reminder notice?" Within moments, my father sent a clear image of the notice addressed to Goldsmith Enterprises, showing 4 months of unpaid rent. I showed the image to Mason and Diana, doubting they could dismiss it as fake given the immediate proof. "See, if you don't pay soon, we might have to consider legal action. What are you going to do?" I asked calmly. Diana's confidence wavered as she mumbled, "Come to think of it, Dad has been stressed lately, talking about slow sales and firing a lot of employees." Mason, however, seemed to spiral into denial, accusing me of fabricating the story to split them up. "You're just trying to trick us and tear us apart, aren't you? You're still that kind of person trying to get back at me for remarrying. Your tactics are dirty, he shouted, causing me to step back, shocked by his loud, accusing voice. His words brought back painful memories of our marriage, of all the harsh things he had said when things got tough between us. But now, standing here, I was no longer the person who took his words silently. What are you even saying, Mason? Do you really think I still have feelings for you? How foolish. I've long been over a man like you. In fact, I feel sorry for Diana getting caught up with someone like you, I said, my voice steady but firm. Did you marry her just for her money? You had shallow reasons for marrying me too, like wanting to get married quickly and wanting kids. And who was it that left me when he found out we couldn't have kids? Who called me useless for being infertile? You're to blame for all of it, yet you think I still have feelings for you? You must be out of your mind. Mason's face turned red with anger. You're just an arrogant old hag. You probably can't even get married or have kids anymore. Diana and I are planning to have fun making a baby after this trip, he retorted, his voice thick with desperation. It was then I decided to reveal the truth, to finally put an end to his assumptions. Oh, I didn't mention it, but I'm 5 months pregnant. I'm in the stable phase of my pregnancy, so my dad suggested I take this trip to relax, I revealed calmly. That's right, after our divorce, I found someone who truly supports me. My boss at work, who happens to be a subordinate of my father. He has been a great support both personally and professionally. I found out I was pregnant just 5 months ago. It was a quick marriage, but my company and my father celebrated it grandly. Mason's face fell, his earlier bravado evaporating as he processed the news. You're pregnant? So were you using birth control? The question was absurd, and I couldn't help but feel a mixture of pity and relief as I looked at him. My life had moved on from the chaos he brought into it. Now, more than ever, I was sure of my path forward, strengthened by the support of my new husband and the imminent responsibility of leading my father's company, especially as he planned to retire soon due to health reasons. My future, though once intertwined with Mason's, was now firmly my own, filled with new beginnings and free from his shadow. Mason's confusion was palpable as he stomped his feet, bewildered by the revelation. Birth control? I never did that, remember? I told you I had infertility tests at the clinic and they found no issues. So the problem wasn't just with me, I said, my words blunt and to the point. His face contorted with the realization. Does that mean Diana and I can't have kids? Why did I divorce you to marry Diana? He muttered to himself, his shoulders slumping in defeat. What do you mean, why? You felt betrayed knowing he was infertile? Diana snapped back, her anger flaring at Mason's self-centered logic. Realizing I had no reason to engage further, I delivered my final statement. That's why from now on, please keep your affairs separate from mine. Regarding the rent for Goldsmith Enterprises, I expect full payment. If you intend to continue leasing the building, please settle the overdue rent soon. Otherwise, we'll need to pursue legal action. I have nothing more to say to you. Goodbye. With that, I left Mason and Diana in mid-argument and confidently returned to my hotel room. Upon my return from the trip, my husband greeted me with a warm smile. Welcome back. Sorry, I couldn't help around the house. Was everything okay? Of course it was fine. I'm just glad you got to relax, Patricia. Thank you, he replied, his smile genuine and comforting. Since marrying my current husband, I've felt reassured daily, and thoughts of Mason have faded into the background. After that incident, I didn't see Mason again, but through my father's contacts, I learned that Mason and Diana's situation had worsened. Despite his initial belief that he was marrying into wealth, Mason discovered that Goldsmith Enterprises was steeped in debt. News had spread across TV channels about an employee at Goldsmith Enterprises embezzling millions from clients. Diana's father had known about the fraud but attempted to cover it up to protect the company's reputation. However, once the scandal became public, Goldsmith Enterprises stock plummeted, and the company lost its credibility. A mass exodus of employees followed, In such a dire state, it was clear they couldn't possibly cover their rent, let alone recover from the scandal. This turn of events reaffirmed my relief in having moved on from that chapter in my life, as I focused on a future filled with stability and genuine affection with my new husband.